The emergency bay of the interspecies medical outpost 19 was lit in a cold bluish hue, its sterile walls buzzing intermittently with life monitor pulses and alert chimes. Dr. Halen Merrick stood with his arms crossed, boots anchored wide on the floor, watching a creature laid out on the surgical slab. It was barely breathing. Its body was a tangled mess of thick, scaled hide and sinew twisted near the thorax, a deep puncture wound leaking clear, greenish fluid onto the biofoam below. The creature's name was unpronounceable, but the station log had tagged it as a Zyrillian tundra glider native to the frost moons of Trelvi. The alien vet, a tall, angular being named Vekal, stood across from Halen, shoulders slumped and two of its long fingers pressed against the side of its skull in apparent fatigue. Its narrow eyes flicked from the monitor to the patient. It has suffered spinal destabilization, multiple internal ruptures, and a double lung collapse, Vekal said, his voice smooth and even. Prognosis is terminal. I will initiate sedation and terminate in 60 seconds. No, Halen said. Vekal paused, neck tilting slightly. Clarify. We can still save it. Halen stepped closer, pulling a diagnostic wand from his coat. You're giving up too early. It is not giving up, Vekal said. It is clinical accuracy. This species cannot survive such trauma. You ever worked on a golden retriever hit by a snowplow? Vekal blinked. That sentence has no relevance. It does. I had one come into my ER back in Alaska. Spine shattered. Liver torn. One of its lungs was half frozen from exposure. Took us 6 surgeries and a month of round-the-clock care, but we got him walking again. He went home wagging his tail. This is not Earth, Vekal said. I know that. Halen moved around the slab, eyes scanning the readouts. He tapped the thoracic display. Here. This segment isn't fully severed. The spinal membrane still has conduction. Marginal conduction will not restore locomotion. I'm not aiming for perfection. I'm aiming for survival. Vekal exhaled through his vent lines, a sound like wind blowing through leaves. You have less than 10 minutes before cardiac failure. Proceed if you insist, but I will not assist. Fine. Halen snapped on gloves. But keep the synth oxide pumping. I'll need perfusion stable. Vekal hesitated. Then he adjusted the drip without a word. Halen leaned over the creature, carefully inserting a microstent into the spinal junction. The creature spasmed once, then stilled. The green fluid thickened, clotting under the pressure of the implant. Halen worked methodically, sealing internal ruptures with a thermocoagulator and using localized cryofoam to slow bleeding. It was a dance of seconds and centimeters. One wrong move and the thing would flatline. After 23 minutes, Halen stepped back, breathing heavily, sweat clinging to his forehead. Vitals are stabilizing, Vekal said quietly. Told you, Halen replied, pulling off a glove. 2 hours later, Halen sat in the decontamination chamber, arms resting on his knees. His back ached. He hadn't eaten since early morning and the adrenaline was fading fast. Vekal entered. The door sealed behind him. You have altered my understanding, Vekal said. Good. Maybe next time you'll wait before declaring something dead. It is not your methods that astound me, Vekal said. It is your irrational persistence. You say irrational. I call it stubborn optimism. Your optimism nearly killed it. And your logic would have definitely killed it. Vekal blinked. It still may not survive. Then at least we gave it a shot. There was a pause. Then Vekal nodded once. Its species is one of high emotional complexity. If it lives, it will remember this. Let's hope it remembers me fondly. The next day, Halen returned to the creature's room. The lights were dimmed. Monitors beeped in a slow, steady rhythm. The glider lay motionless but alive, its breathing aided by a ventilator. A young technician named Eric stood nearby, holding a data tablet. I checked the scans like you asked, Eric said. The spinal conduction is improving. Minimal but measurable. Good. How's its neurochem? Stable but fluctuating. Could be stress. Or confusion. Halen stepped up to the creature. He didn't touch it, just watched its chest rise and fall. Hey there, he said softly. You're tough. That's good. You're gonna need that. 3 days later, the creature began to move. First a twitch in one limb, then a slow, uncertain curl of its tail. Halen was in the middle of cataloging post-op notes when Eric burst into the office. It's awake. Halen dropped the tablet and sprinted down the corridor. Inside the recovery bay, the glider's eyes were open. They were large and deep brown, almost mammalian in their softness. It turned its head slowly, tracking Halen as he entered. Halen approached carefully. "Hey, easy now," he said. "You're safe." The glider blinked, then made a low, warbling sound from deep in its throat. "That's a greeting," Vekel said from the doorway. "It recognizes you." "That's good. Recognition is good. It may imprint. You are, after all, the reason it is alive." Halen chuckled. "Let's not make it weird." Over the next 2 weeks, Halen oversaw the glider's rehabilitation. It could not yet stand on its own, but it responded to stimuli and began eating on its own. Its progress was slow but undeniable. Then came the infection. A fever spiked. The glider became agitated, its breathing erratic. Halen ran tests and found a bacterial bloom near one of the internal implants. He ran into the lab, grabbing culture kits and a portable scanner. Eric's followed, carrying a tray of antimicrobial agents. "Which one?" Eric's asked. "None of these will work. It's alien flora. We need something custom." "You want to synthesize a compound?" "Exactly. But that could take hours." "Then we should have started 10 minutes ago." Eric's blinked, then set the tray down and got to work beside him. They spent the next 6 hours isolating the infection strain, mapping its protein chains, and building a compatible compound. Halen's hands shook from exhaustion, but he didn't stop. When the compound was ready, he administered it directly into the glider's internal cavity. For 17 minutes, nothing happened. Then the fever dropped. The next morning, the glider sat upright for the first time. It was a full month before the glider could walk again. Its gait was uneven. It limped slightly on one side, but it moved. Halen stood back, arms folded, watching as the creature took cautious steps around the enclosed habitat. It paused once, looked back at him, and made the same warbling sound. "That's its name for you," Vekel said quietly. "How do you know?" "It is a vocal identifier, personalized. It will not use it with others." Halen smiled faintly. "Guess we're friends now." "You have done something extraordinary, Halen Merrick. I just didn't like giving up." "That is not a flaw," Vekel said. "But it is not common." A week later, Command ordered the glider to be transported back to its homeworld. Halen stood by the transport bay, watching as the handlers secured the crate. The glider looked out from the transparent panel. Its eyes locked on him. He stepped forward and placed a hand against the glass. "Take care of yourself, all right?" The glider pressed its snout against the same spot. Then the crate lifted and disappeared into the ship. Vekel stood beside him. "You saved a life that no one else believed could be saved. That's the job." "No. That is the difference. That is what makes you human." Halen didn't reply. He just stood there, watching the stars swallow the ship whole. The hydroponic garden on Outpost 19 wasn't designed for medical meetings, but Halen didn't care. It had oxygen-rich air, a bench that didn't squeak, and most importantly, it was the only place where Vekel didn't talk like a diagnostic manual. He sat cross-legged on a crate of nutrient gel packs, watching a stalk of red leaf sway gently under the overhead lights. "You're not supposed to be in here without a sterile suit," Vekel said from behind a cluster of glowing moss. "Guess I'll take my chances," Halen replied. He plucked a leaf and held it up. "You ever eat one of these? They are not for consumption. Right, but theoretically." Vekel stepped into view, expression unreadable as always. "I do not engage in culinary theory." Halen dropped the leaf and leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Transport logs say the glider's ship made it halfway to Trelvi before it rerouted. That is accurate. And now it's circling a moon that's not even on the authorized list." Vekel's head tilted a few degrees. "You accessed restricted navigation files?" "I read the maintenance manifest." "Someone forgot to scrub the coordinates." There was a pause. Then Vekel sat opposite him, folding his long limbs with the ease of a creature built for high gravity. "The Zyrillian authorities refused repatriation," he said. "They were disturbed by your intervention. Halen blinked. What, saving it offended them? They viewed it as unnatural. The glider was marked for ceremonial release. Its survival disrupts a cultural expectation. Halen laughed once, sharp and short. So they'd rather it die than adapt? To them, suffering without restoration is sacred. You introduced a variable they find intolerable. What happens now? The glider has been placed under diplomatic quarantine. It will not be returned. Quarantine where? Orbiting a neutral moon near the Zyrillian border. A temporary habitat has been constructed. Halen rubbed his jaw. So it's alive, but in exile. That is an oversimplification. No, it's a prison with better lighting. They sat in silence for a moment. The garden lights dimmed slightly as the artificial dusk cycle began. I want to see it, Halen said. That is inadvisable. I'm not asking for a tourism brochure. I'm saying I'm going. Veckel exhaled through his third lung, a subtle shift of his upper chest. There are protocols. I'll sign whatever. Just clear it. 2 days later, Halen stood at the edge of a small shuttle bay, staring at a transport pod shaped like a metallic seed. It was barely large enough for 2 passengers and a crate of supplies, and it vibrated faintly from internal stabilizers. A crew member handed him a pressure suit, then ducked away without speaking. No one seemed eager to be associated with this trip. Veckel appeared as the hatch opened. I've arranged for a 2-hour visitation window, he said. You are to observe only. No direct contact. Halen zipped the suit halfway up. Appreciate the help. This will not improve your status with the council. I wasn't aware I had a status. You do. It's currently being reviewed under the heading Human Deviance, Medical Interference Patterns. Halen climbed into the pod. Catchy. The launch was smooth, with only a brief lurch as they cleared the outpost's gravitational lock. From the viewport, the stars seemed unusually sharp. The shuttle's autopilot engaged silently, guiding them toward a pale blue moon wrapped in a tight orbital trace. When they docked, the new habitat came into view. It looked like half a geodesic dome nestled on a rocky plateau. Transparent walls revealed the interior, a series of artificial perches, heat lamps, and a shallow pool of mineral water. The glider lay near the back, stretched out under a heat panel. As Halen exited the pod, he was greeted by a Zyrillian liaison, tall, translucent, with shifting pigments across its skin like moving oil. It didn't speak. It simply pointed toward the observation corridor. Halen followed the narrow passage until he reached a viewing room. There was no furniture, just a wide panel of glass and a biometric scanner beside it. The glider turned its head as he approached. Its eyes were brighter than he remembered, and there was a faint shimmer along the spine where the surgical repairs had fused. He tapped the glass. Hey! The glider shifted upright, balancing on its forelimbs. It made a low, vibrating sound and moved closer. Halen crouched, keeping his hand on the panel. I know. Not what we expected. The glider pressed its snout against the glass. It stayed like that, unmoving. You remember me, huh? There was no reply, of course. But the glider's posture said enough. The Zyrillian stepped into the room and gestured to a panel on the far wall. A holographic display flickered to life, showing data streams in layered glyphs. The liaison rotated one tendril toward Halen. You want me to look at this? Halen asked. No response. Just a slow blink from an eye with no pupil. He approached. The glyphs reconfigured into a basic translation module. Behavioral shifts, the translation read. Neural patterns altered. Response matrices inconsistent. Define inconsistent, Halen said. The display shifted. Mimicry of non-native emotional responses. Patterned after human interactions. Halen exhaled. You're saying it's picking up human behavior? Imitation without known purpose. Suspected imprinting. He turned back to the glider. It was watching him intently, head tilted slightly. I didn't teach it anything. The glyphs pulsed. Prolonged exposure to atypical stimuli may override native cognitive baselines. So it's acting different because I didn't let it die. Course of action remains undefined. Species elders reject return. Halen stood still for a moment. Then why keep it alive? Observation. The glider suddenly moved, pacing the perimeter of its enclosure. It stopped by one of the heat panels, then looked back at Halen and made a brief, sharp trill. "That's new," he said. The Zyrillian didn't respond. He turned back to the data panel. "Any signs of pain?" "Decline. Physical stability confirmed. Cognitive instability increasing. I want access to the medical logs." "No authority. I'm the only one who's successfully operated on its physiology. You want accurate observation, you give me the logs." The Zyrillian stared at him for a long moment, then extended a tendril toward the scanner. The wall display opened a new layer: charts, scans, logs from the past 30 days. Halen scrolled through them quickly. Vitals steady. Nutrient absorption optimal. But something caught his eye: a series of behavioral notes. Engaging with reflective surfaces. Vocalizing when alone. Refusing certain food types. He looked up. The glider had returned to the glass, pressing its snout against the panel once more. Halen placed his hand on the same spot. "I think it's lonely." The Zyrillian's color shifted slightly. "Not a medically recognized condition. Maybe not in your manual. But it matters." He stepped back. "I'm done here." As he re-entered the pod, Veckel's voice came through the comms. "You were given limited access. I didn't break anything. There are concerns you may attempt further interference." "I haven't done that yet." The trip back was quiet. Halen kept his eyes on the stars, letting the silence settle. Back at the outpost, Veckel met him at the docking bay. "I assume you plan to escalate." "I plan to advocate," Halen said. "You will lose. Maybe. But I won't quit." Veckel hesitated. Then, quietly, "The glider is not the only one being watched." "I figured." They walked together down the main corridor, boots echoing off the steel floor. "You risk isolation," Veckel added. "I've been isolated before. Doesn't kill you." "No," Veckel said. "But it changes you." Halen didn't answer. He just kept walking. The containment dome on the Zyrillian moon was quiet, dustless, and sealed tighter than any surgical suite Halen had ever worked in. He stood beside a low console, watching the glider doze under a patch of infrared lighting. The creature's breathing had a smooth rhythm now. No alarms, no beeping monitors, just the soft hum of the artificial atmosphere. Veckel entered behind him, his gait slower than usual. The corridor hadn't changed since Halen's last visit. Transparent walls, muted light, no color except for the flicker of data panels. The glider twitched its tail once, sensing movement, but didn't lift its head. "You were granted one final visit," Veckel said. "I didn't come to say goodbye," Halen replied. "No. You came to insist." Halen turned, arms folded. The neurological scans show stable patterns. Behaviors consistent. There's no reason it can't be relocated. Veckel didn't move. "It is not a matter of viability. It is a matter of protocol." Then the protocol's broken. You treat sentient life like a ledger entry. You misunderstand the purpose of separation. It was not punishment. It was containment of anomaly. That's the same thing with a fancier name. Veckel's pupils narrowed. "You are a physician. You know there are limits to intervention. I also know you don't leave a living being in solitary confinement because it made the mistake of surviving." Veckel gestured toward the glider. "It does not exhibit distress. That's because you've never looked for it. Isolation affects mammals differently. It starts subtle: reduced appetite, reduced grooming. Then it gets worse. You think because it's quiet, it's fine. It's not fine." Veckel was silent for several seconds. Then he said, "Your recommendations were sent to the council 2 weeks ago. They were reviewed and rejected." Halen finished. "Yes. Then why let me back?" Veckel stepped closer. "Because I wanted you to see the result." He tapped a sequence into the console beside Halen. A section of the dome's wall shifted, revealing a small adjacent chamber. Inside was a second glider, smaller, with paler scales and a noticeable scar across its left flank. Halen stared. The second glider was curled in a corner, eyes closed. "You cloned it?" he asked. "No," Halen turned. "Then where did it come from?" "It was recovered from the same crash. It was presumed non-viable. Until recently." Why didn't anyone? It was deemed unnecessary to inform you. Until now. The original glider stirred. It rose slowly, testing its joints, and ambled toward the barrier separating the two chambers. The second one remained still. We allowed interaction through transparent partitions, Veckel said. Initial results were inconclusive. Then the larger one began to vocalize. Vocalize how? Repeated low tones in specific patterns, followed by physical mimicry. Attempts to demonstrate movement. Halen stepped closer to the glass. It was teaching it. We believe so. The second one began to respond. Its motor reflexes improved. It began to mirror posture. Then feeding behavior changed. Halen watched the two through the barrier. The original glider pressed its head to the separation panel. The smaller one shifted slightly, then did the same. You were correct, Veckel said. Adaptation is contagious. Not contagious, Halen replied. Just brave. Veckel turned his eyes toward him. The council will not authorize relocation, but they have agreed to habitat expansion. The dome will be extended. Shared space will be permitted. Observation will continue. Halen nodded slowly. That's something. It is not what you wanted. No, but it's better than what was. Veckel adjusted the collar of his uniform, then looked back at the gliders. They are not alone now. That matters. The console chimed, signaling the end of visitation. Halen didn't move immediately. He watched the two creatures remain by the barrier, side by side, silent but aware. As he finally turned to leave, Veckel followed him into the corridor. There is one more detail, Veckel said. Halen raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. The larger glider began vocalizing again yesterday. A new pattern. It only occurs when it faces the outer wall. Facing where? Veckel pointed toward the observation corridor. Here. Halen blinked. What kind of pattern? We do not know, but recordings show it occurs only during your visits, or when it hears human speech. Halen stopped walking. It's trying to communicate, he said. Possibly. Or it is remembering. I'll take either. Veckel's expression didn't change, but his next words came more softly. You have done something unusual, not simply medically, culturally. Halen tilted his head. You trying to say thank you? No, Veckel said. I am saying. I was wrong. That caught Halen off guard. But he didn't press it. He simply nodded. Well, maybe next time you won't wait so long to admit it. Next time I hope there is no need. They walked the rest of the corridor in silence. Outside, the moon's rocky horizon stretched beneath a sky dotted with unfamiliar stars. Back aboard the shuttle, Halen sat in the co-pilot seat as the engines started their sequence. The pilot, another Zyrillian. This one smaller and more iridescent, glanced at him once. You are the human who repaired the glider. That's me. I reviewed the surgical footage. I did not know bone could knit with that method. Neither did I until I tried it, Halen said. There was a pause. You are not a predictable species. Wouldn't be any fun if we were? The pilot nodded, then initiated departure. As the shuttle lifted from the moon's surface, Halen looked back once. The dome receded into the gray soil, a small bubble of life in an otherwise barren place. He couldn't see the gliders from this distance, but he knew they were there. Not surviving. Living. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like a stranger in this part of the galaxy. He just felt like a vet who did the job the only way he knew how. By refusing to quit.